Hello and welcome back. This is your ghost of a host with the most, Shanna.
Hi. It's
And
PJ.
I'm joined with. Oh boy, tonight is a special episode because
Is it?
gosh, I was never inviting you on again. We're all alone
Hi.
in the well house. Lauren and I are taking a deserved week off after all of our Gettysburg work.
In New York City.
I know, they're show-offs. Anyway, so what's going to happen?
What is going to happen?
PJ and I are going to be alone with a little recording, and then all of you guys, our listeners, get an interview with the famous Kevin Paul, writer of Haunted Hills and Hollows, What Lurks in Greene County, Pennsylvania, and of course, part 2, which he just published a couple years ago.
Yep. So we've already used a bunch of his work
We have.
in previous episodes.
I got a free book that's signed by him.
Yes.
Yep, it's very exciting.
But the BEK episode was some of
Where
his
the
stuff.
white things are.
And Where the White Things Are was another one. So as you're listening to this on YouTube, there is, when we jump into the interview portion of it, that is also on YouTube. So if you want to see our faces, I'm not sure who would want to do that.
And our super cool
but-
Santa Claus, Kevin Paul, as I like to call him.
Yes.
He is so wonderful.
Yeah, it was a great interview. So definitely stick around after this little story that you have planned for that interview.
If you just want the interview to show your friends or to listen to, it's under an hour and it's on YouTube, as PJ said.
Yep, and we're going to have the audio here.
Yeah, on our YouTube channel, which is not Well House Exorcism. It is,
Games Overboard.
yes, remember, Games Overboard. But to get us in the mood tonight, PJ, we're all alone in the Well House.
Should we turn the lights off?
No, because then I can't read.
Okay.
I want to mention one story out of the original book that Rosemary Ellen Guiley helped. She and Kevin Paul wrote together. The last chapter is just phenomenal, and I love it. And I want your honest opinion because you have not read this.
Nope.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up, it's chapter 17, and I'm going to open up with the actual paragraph here. Angry Spirits of the Land. Out in the hills beyond Wayne Township, a small farm sat abandoned for a good number of years. The small two-story farmhouse, built in the early 19th century, was in disrepair and had never been updated with indoor plumbing. The weed-choked fields were bordered on 3 sides by forest. Underneath, the land was a honeycomb of abandoned mine tunnels. How are you feeling?
All right, already I'm not a fan.
A little spooky.
Mine tunnels and all that, like, no.
Yeah, it's worse than our house.
Watch out, kids, you might fall in.
Where'd the dog go? Oh, I liked that one. Anywho. But I like this story because it echoes our house a lot. But I hold that and I mentioned this in the interview too, this place in particular is Skinwalker Ranch in Pennsylvania, which I kind of hinted at in the interview.
Okay.
But listen to these stories. So in the mid-2000s, when we're graduating from high school and going to college, a person actually bought it to reinvigorate the farm, if you will. However, they hired a manager to take care of it. Mm-hmm. So that's Jack, not his real name. Again, I love this book. So he set to work to fix the property. He did discover some unexpected bonuses, if you will, which would be ghosts of dead people, a poltergeist, a cat-like imp creature, shadow people, alien-looking beings, phantom creatures with too many legs, and, capital I, it, a powerful entity of unknown origins with shape-shifting ability and a nasty attitude. Sound a little bit like Skinwalker Ranch already?
Yeah, a little bit.
Right? Yep. And you already mentioned the mines. You don't like that. So, but yeah, as we already know, in the paranormal lore, mines, water, tunnels, wells, springs, all those subterranean places provide excellent corridors for spiritual travel, as the book says too. So at the beginning, Jack, not his real name, noticed that the house and the area felt off, but he ignored it while he worked. Mm-hmm. It just had an atmosphere. That's kind of how he thought of it. But then one day he is inside the farmhouse and he's just pulling down some old curtains and he has this feeling that someone is watching him or something is watching him. And so he starts seeing these like strange flashes of light in the house, almost like someone's taking pictures of him. And then he glances out the window and he sees this
A guy with a camera.
No, I wish. He sees a head staring back at him on a body, but the head, it's creepy. It's very creepy. It resembles, and I'm quoting from the text here, the grotesque caricature of a hairless cat with pointed ears set way back, big yellow eyes with vertical slits, crooked cat-like teeth protruding from its closed mouth, and dark brown leathery skin. It looked very frail, and he had to guess that if it was standing up, it'd be 3.5 feet-ish tall. So
yeah, that's...
You know.
That's weird.
It's fine.
I mean, looking out your window and seeing any head looking back at you is just going to be creepy.
No, the creature does vanish at that moment, but obviously comes back again. But anyway, he wanted to figure out what it was. So he actually did some research. And after going through a whole bunch of research, he came across a woodcut drawing of a medieval demon, actually. And they called it an imp-like creature that was called a guardian of the woodlands. And so he thought, okay, well, we're out in the woods here. This farm is pretty, isolated. Maybe that's what it was. Because this is the picture, and of course our viewers can't see it, but it looks like a wood carving, and it looks like something you would be seeing in medieval times.
Yeah, I mean, if you look up old wooden masks and things like that, it looks similar to one of those.
Like a cat wooden mask, yeah. So no surprise, Jack never stayed there overnight. He just worked in the daytime. But he would come back in the morning, and again, he's putting in electricity, he's putting in telephones. So he would open the locked door. Okay, again, didn't stay at night, but locked the doors. He'd open up the locked house and sometimes find things in disarray. The phone would be taken apart, the batteries out, and all the pieces left lying on the desk. Of course, the window where he saw the cat face, it would be open. Like someone jimmied it to get in. Of course, yeah. And there'd be these muddy footprints just, on the windowsill, on the floor around it. Yeah, that's creepy. Objects, especially tools, would disappear and reappear in random locations, not unlike Skinwalker Ranch, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what really bothered me when I was reading this is he found human-like footprints with impressions of a long skirt dragging behind it upstairs.
Oh.
And what's interesting is that's kind of where a lot of the creepy activity happens, is up in the upstairs 2 bedrooms and a closet.
Okay.
Yep. So, it actually says here, too, the upstairs felt the worst in atmosphere. And it says Jack could feel a presence moving around the house, and it would zip up the stairs. He felt it ran upstairs and would hide in a closet because you know how you kind of hear where things are running. Mm-hmm. So he could kind of figure out what was near the closet. He'd hear thumping, banging, footsteps going back and forth. He'd hear marbles being dropped on the floor, and then of course one time there was a bowling ball sound that dropped on the floor. Jeez. So it was pretty obvious that there was something there. But what creeps me out the most is it says sometimes he saw out of the corner of his eye a dark shadow, and it would flit about.
That sounds familiar.
Right? Yeah. Sounds like our house, but that's nice. But anyway, so he has all this going on. He's like, nope, just ignore it. Just ignore it. Keep working. I'm getting paid to do this. But in the summertime, they actually would have student volunteers there to help out. So, and they also had interns. So one intern one day shows up with a gun strapped to his hip, and Jack's like, what you got that gun there for, And the student says, well, I have a permit for it. And he's, what are you going to do with it? You going to shoot a groundhog? No, it's for protection. I swear there's people in the house, and no one's supposed to be there. And I want to be able to defend myself. And Jack's like, yeah, that's not going to work. Trust me. What's in there, gun cannot get, put it away. And so there's another intern who was very devout, very Christian, didn't believe in paranormal because, of course, you're supposed to go somewhere when you die. Mm-hmm. But one day Jack walks in, and the intern who was eating lunch looks up and sees Jack and just turns completely pale. And so Jack kind of goes, what's wrong? You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. And the guy goes, I thought you were upstairs. There are footsteps up there. Someone was walking around. And Jack's like, I've been outside all day. Welcome to the house. You like it? Well, that guy ended up, leaving. So that intern, the intern left. But another one though I find creepy. One day Jack's on a ladder outside working on one of the upper floor bedroom windows, so unsafe location to be on the ladder. But as he's working on it, he looks in the window because he can feel himself being watched, and he sees a heavy-set, stern woman staring at him. She did not look happy at all to see him, and of course he's so startled he almost falls off the ladder. Does not, which is good. He did some research, asked why would there be a female here, of course. And when he did the research, he found the only reference really to a woman was one who had lost a baby in the house at the age of like 1 month, died of natural causes. But you can still hear the phantom sounds of baby cries throughout the house. And so he's wondering like if she's connected to that.
Yeah.
But the most pervasive ghost is a man he named Porter, because, again, named after a former human resident that was there. So they're thinking it's this guy. He would just glide around, always kind of wore a baseball cap and overalls, very tall and skinny, dark shadow. But he was really interested in anything doing with, like, machinery and, like, working, because you can tell he's, like, a farmer. So Jack would just feel someone peering over his shoulder, and he just knew it was him. Not, like, in any way malicious, just unnerving because someone's watching you work, but it's just because he's interested. Again, like Ray and me, I would go crazy with the Wi-Fi, and for me, it'd be like the water, but he's like, oh, what you got there? Yeah, so that one's a nice one, but creepy more things. Talk about animal scurrying sounds. There are these gray creatures that are in the house. They're just ghostly phenomena, but they're the size of, like, Manx cats, and they have many, many legs. Not just four. Mm-hmm. And they scurry along the baseboards and up and down the stairs.
Huh.
Yeah, no thank you. This is another cool story, though. The Mystery Visitor. So I'm just going to read the story. Jack was outside working one afternoon when a shiny black late model Ford pickup turned off the dirt road into the driveway of the farm. The road down the hollow is long and dusty. In spite of that, the truck was spotless, as though it had just come fresh out of a car wash. So he comes up, pulls up, and he rolls down the window. He looks like an average guy, and he goes, "Say, do you ever know O.K.?" Because they don't put names in here, so they have O-K-. Do you know that guy? He hailed Jack, and of course, O.K. was the former owner, now deceased, so Jack would just say, "No, I don't." And so the guy goes, "Boy, was he a character. I should stop by and tell you sometime." With that, he backed up and drove off. Jack had no clue who the stranger was, but he came by 2 more times in the same spotless Ford pickup, and he always said the same thing every time and then drove off. So on the 3rd visit, Jack decided he was like, you know what, I'm gonna try and get this thing to talk to me a little more. And so the guy comes up and says, "Say, did you ever know O.K.?" And Jack goes, "No, but why don't you come on inside the house and tell me about him? I'd like to take your picture too." The stranger just stares and goes, "No." And he just drove off, never to return again.
Huh?
But interesting, right? So
Weird.
Obviously, phantom ghostly because the car is completely pristine. It's the same thing. It's obviously this kind of like a residual haunt, but I just thought that was kind of cool.
Is it though? Because it was interacting with them. Is it residual?
But it's like, it could be a residual intelligence. Is that a thing? Because he says the same things, and when it changes, he's upset and disappears.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe there's a loop, and maybe Jack fixed the loop.
He broke the loop.
He broke the loop. Oh no! Where's the man in the black Ford pickup? But here's a sad thing to go back to Skinwalker Ranch. Of course, farm cats are not a surprise. They just show up, and people bring them by, of course, too, out in the country. If you live on a farm, you know what we're talking about. For a time, the farm had several, including one given as a gift by a volunteer student. She loved this cat. One day, it just disappeared. So Jack went looking for it. No. That'd be great if it did. But anyway, you'll see why I hope it's in the truck. Jack went looking for it, and he made a grisly discovery inside the house. In the storeroom, he found the remains of this cat.
Oh.
But what's interesting is it had been slit open, and all of its soft tissue had been removed. The bones, muscle, and pelt only remained. There was not a drop of blood or blood stains anywhere. The gutting was so clean that the remains could have been donned as a bizarre hat. Sounds a lot like Skinwalker Ranch, though, right?
That's very much like a cattle mutilation.
Yeah, very, very surgical. Wow. So he took it outside and put it on, like, a section of the hill just so the student wouldn't see it because he didn't want her to get upset. He went back later and it was gone. But, you're out in the woods, of course. Anything could have run off with it to eat it. But that was the only cat that was ever mutilated. However, they lost a lot of chickens. They'd be dead inside their pens, but not mangled or partially devoured. They were just dead. And what's creepy is sometimes they'd be lined up neatly inside the pens.
Wow.
Right?
That's so crazy.
So Jack installed a motion camera to catch whatever this thing is. Nothing ever showed up, but the chickens continued to die, be lined up, you name it. And never eaten, just killed.
Yeah.
But the hillside also had its own energy. So it's not just the house; it is the hillside too. Not unlike Skinwalker Ranch, there's sections, of the around there. So it says there was a certain patch of the hill that was always trouble. If Jack drove his pickup through it or operated machinery on it, it would always break down. And he felt strange passing through the patch. He called it the Forbidden Zone. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah. But he was out there one time and he met a force that was completely like inhuman but very intelligent, was not happy that he was there. So it says it usually showed itself as a gray or dark form that moved swiftly over the ground and wove through the trees. Sometimes it was a ball. Once he saw it as a flat rug and rolled itself up into a ball. He could watch it for up to 10 seconds, and then it would vanish into thin air or seem to drop into the ground and disappear. In addition, there were colored balls of light that bobbed around over the ground. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, it almost sounds like an alien craft, but it's not because it's intelligent.
Well, I mean, it sounds very much like Skinwalker Ranch, which is almost all like alien, related.
But I think our land is like it was, Native Americans lived here before us. So could it be like some kind of ancient being from that too? Just like Skinwalker.
Ancient alien?
An ancient alien. I knew it. But just like Skinwalker Ranch, the hitchhiker effect, which we kind of discussed with Liminal Unlimited, the activity followed Jack home as well. So one time he was driving home and he saw a dark, menacing figure sitting on a fence post. And it actually illuminated when he drove past, like his lights hit it, and he could see it staring at him with these heavy, dark eyes, and then it just disappeared. At home, he would hear the little gray scurrying things going around his house, and a couple of them attacked him in his bed. He started sleeping downstairs with the TV on because it freaked him out so much.
Gosh.
But then his family experienced the phenomena as well. So I'm actually going to stop there because if you are interested in the story, I tell you, listeners, you got to pick up Haunted Hills and Hollows, What Lurks in Greene County, Pennsylvania by Rosemary Ellen Guiley and Kevin Paul, because the story only gets crazier.
So there's still several pages left to that story.
There's pages left. Yeah, because Rosemary and Kevin are called in. And so they start doing their own research, their own experiments, just like Skinwalker Ranch. Crazy stuff happens to the point where no one's safe. And they also have the hitchhiker effect. And then apports show up as well. So it's just a fascinating last story of that book.
Yeah.
That's why I was excited to get the next book in the series, because that story is just crazy.
Yeah.
So without further ado, I want to ask you, do we have our own Skinwalker Ranch in Pennsylvania?
I mean, if that's all real, and, if Kevin Paul went and investigated and can attest to it, I mean, yeah, it has all the same kind of activity that Skinwalker Ranch has.
And actually, I believe if it was before or after our interview, because I think we cut before we finished talking, that was the one time that he felt unsafe. And it's actually, there's another interview with him on YouTube from somebody else when he did the first novel, I believe, and he discusses it. And he's like, no, don't like being there. I believe it was this farm. So I hold that this definitely is like a Skinwalker Ranch Part 2. We should get our own Travis Taylor up here doing some research. And Lizard Man is in Greene County, which is a little shout out to the interview that's going to play next. So do you want to close out tonight and say goodbye to our guests?
Yeah, enjoy the interview, everyone, and let us know what you think and what you'd like to hear from us next.
Yep. We are going to maybe take a week break. I haven't decided yet because I have a big 12 to 20 page grad paper that's due. And it's also PSSA week up here in Pennsylvania, so I might take a week off. But I'll tell you what, I need some ideas for Pennsylvania. So please find us on Facebook or find me on Twitter at wellhouse_exorc and send me your ideas. Tell me if you want me to kind of move out of Pennsylvania a little bit and go to New York or New Jersey or Ohio or West Virginia. I don't care. You tell me and I'll do it. All right. So email us, shout out to us, hop on our contact page on our website.
Yep.
All right. Enjoy the interview. Bye, guys. Welcome. Tonight we have a special episode of Well House Exorcism where we are interviewing the one and only Kevin Paul. Thank you for being on tonight.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the invitation. It's nice to see you all alive as opposed to hearing your voices.
The voice is out of the box.
Yeah, I hear voices all the time.
The disembodied voices. It's sort of what we're specializing in, but
That works.
I assume it was quite the letdown when you saw me. But it's okay. I have that effect on people. Like, oh, that's what she looks like. Oh, boy, I thought it was a man.
what?
Oh my.
Tough crowd.
Tough crowd.
Oh,
This took a turn already.
I love you.
are you gonna put on a man voice then? Is that what you're getting at?
I did last night,
Oh,
actually.
okay.
Yeah. So, fun side note, we are doing a crossover episode with Liminal Unlimited, and I really feel that they should talk to you because you got some really cool stories about cryptids, and they love cryptids, of course. But we were recording last night with them, and I forgot where I was going with that.
Man voice.
Man voice, yes.
Man voice.
So Kyle puts on his music, and it starts off, and he's like, "Welcome, Lemon Nerds," and he has this big intro, like, "Welcome to this different side of whatever."
Yeah, whatever.
Cyber
it is.
operating out of a-
Whatever his tagline is, and I go, "No, you're in the well house now." I tried to get as low as I could, and he called me. I'm like, "Oh, that's the best I could do." My natural
So-
octave is here.
Apparently, you are officially in the well house now.
You are.
Yes.
This
Yes.
is now
Okay,
your
that's
new
good.
intro. Yes.
Like literally, you're in the well
Yeah,
house.
the well is just right over here.
true.
And,
Right there.
Yeah.
Move the carpet. You see it.
The cart. Well, no, we painted over it now.
Still.
Anywho, let's actually do a job here or something. So I wanted to say thank you so much. First off, I absolutely loved your original book with Rosemary Ellen Guiley. Fantastic book. And so when
thank you.
offered and sent me a free book, I honestly, you can ask PJ, I was squealing.
Yep.
And when I got it and you signed the inside, I was like, everybody look, I have a signed author book.
Awesome.
I'm an English teacher by trade, so I just had my nerd out moment. And I have enjoyed the book a whole bunch. Actually, we already did a little section on the white things. So,
Yeah.
can I ask you a question before I go into my
Sure.
interview questions? Do you think that Greene County is Pennsylvania's version of Skinwalker Ranch?
You could make that argument. There's almost nothing. It's been a while since I've read the book, but right off the top of my head, there's nothing there that hasn't happened here.
Wow.
When you compare it to Chestnut Ridge, I don't know if you've explored that yet.
Not yet, nope.
Okay. About the only thing Chestnut Ridge has that or at least I haven't gotten a report of or heard of, are Thunderbirds. But other than that, Rosemary actually made the claim in the first book that this was the most haunted county in America. And when the book came out, I was kind of cringing. I expected to get a lot more flack about that than what I did. I got a little from some folks in Gettysburg, but
They got a little
No,
jealous.
yeah.
yeah, and I
Like, back off, Kevin Paul. Like, we got our ghost.
we've got the most haunted, town in America, and I countered with, well, you have UFOs.
Exactly.
And-
You don't hear about UFOs
but,
or Bigfoot over there.
Yeah, so you could very easily make that statement. You could probably say that about the community you're in if you look long enough, just based on what you said happened there in the house. I mean, that's Skinwalker stuff.
I agree. Poltergeist activity. Although I'm not sure. Well, we haven't posted our episode yet. Or did we do the poltergeist cat? That was on there, right?
Yeah, that one just
So
posted.
the current episode that's up for Gettysburg Part 2, one of the places in Gettysburg has a poltergeist cat. I have questions, but I also want it. If it's true, better than what we had.
Can we adopt a poltergeist cat? I mean,
Yeah.
what SPCA offers that?
Be careful what you wish for.
Exactly.
I know.
Well, as we sit in this basement, I'm kind of like, oh, I saw other things. You know what? I've been through the worst. So
We'll take your
poltergeist
cat.
cats, we'll take the cat.
You just have like mugs getting knocked off counters all the time. So
I have 3 children. It happens anyway.
They actually see the poltergeist cat?
They say they see it scampering about. It does cause some mischief, yeah.
That's pretty wild.
I know, right? But no Bigfoot. And it only came to me last night because of our crossover episode with Liminal, all the stuff we were talking about, because we've been reading, and you did a whole dive into it,
Yeah.
the Skinwalker book, actually, by...
Hunt for the Skinwalker by Colm Keller.
Yeah. So, like, we did a deep dive in there, and all I could think was, okay, I've seen all of this in these 2 books by Kevin Paul. Like, obviously, we got some stuff happening in Pennsylvania, at least in southwestern Pennsylvania, towards West Virginia. And I had no idea until I read your book, because I think I focus more on ghostly stories and, like, poltergeists and, apparitions. So when I started kind of getting a little out of my comfort zone and started looking at cryptids and stuff because of Mr. Bigfoot over here. Although, I think for you, it's more the Jersey Devil.
I'm fascinated by the
Me
Jersey
too.
Devil.
Yes.
Yeah, the Jersey Devils, it is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I just gravitated towards non-human stuff, and I'm not sure why. That's just where I ended up.
Yeah.
So it seems like just about any place that's got the quote unquote ghost also has stuff like like you experienced, because there's what was the apparition that walked up and down the alley jingling change? Was it Frank?
Fred.
Fred.
Yeah,
Fred.
I have never had a Fred sighting.
Oh, we have, yeah.
I know you have. I have not. No.
So you've got Fred, and then you've got whatever comes up out of the well when it's
Not anymore.
not when it's not sealed. Yeah.
Nobody touch it. Don't look at it. Don't throw a rock at it. We painted the top, not the inside. We made sure that oil stayed there. So I wanted to ask you, what is your job primarily? Because obviously you have written books. I know you do presentations. I saw a YouTube video as well. But what is your primary job?
I'm semi-retired. My primary job for the last 20 years has been soil and water conservation.
Oh, okay, cool.
Oh, wow.
In Greene, Washington, Fayette counties in Pennsylvania, and then the last 3-4 years I've been in the northern panhandle of West Virginia.
Okay.
I started off working for the county conservation district, and I got offered a position with U.S. Department of Agricultural and Natural Resources Conservation Service, which is, I believe, the oldest government conservation agency in the nation.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So a farm background, and I got an ag degree from West Virginia, and I don't farm anymore, but I do the conservation work, and then I'm slowly turning our postage stamp sized lawn is slowly becoming cropland.
Oh, cool.
We've got a garden, and I put in some pollinator habitat and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Nice.
I love it.
That's great.
Pollinator gardens. My
Yeah,
gifted kids are doing that. So
They're a lot of fun. Very,
you
very
keep
relaxing
bees,
in
though?
the summer.
Yeah.
have you started keeping your own bees yet?
No, my wife's allergic.
Right over here.
Yep, that's me.
Got the EpiPens and the whole 9 yards.
Yep.
Yeah.
We learned
And
by
so,
accident with him.
I know our neighborhood's probably like yours. There's a lot of kids, and some kids you could say don't bug the bees, and they wouldn't, and some kids that say don't bug the bees, and they'd go get a stick. And
Of course, yeah.
Right. Yep.
That's
sure.
my son, my youngest, my 3-year-old would be whacking at the bees, whereas other people be like, oh, we love them and nature. And then Alex is like, nah.
yeah.
I feel you. So Laura had a question for you, actually.
Okay.
Oh, I was wondering, what is it that set you on this path to the paranormal? What started the interest for you?
Lifetime experience. The first one I had, I was probably about 5 years old. It was very similar to the chapter in the book where I think we called him Art Huck.
Yeah.
Saw a light being in the bedroom, and I had a very similar experience. And my grandparents lived about 300 feet up the road on a farm. My mom went back to work when I was 5, so my grandparents were daycare, and I got a lot of folklore, but it was an interesting mix. It started off. We would start off the mornings with like old style gospel music, and then whatever we got into the rest of the day. So picked up a lot of folklore, a lot more than what I realized I had till I got older. So if it's kind of an Appalachian thing where it's you can accept the folklore from other belief systems as long as the Trinity's at the top of the pyramid. So that's kind of the way I look at it.
Okay, that makes sense.
No, I had read somewhere that you had learned about Mothman, and that kind of kicked off the paranormal interest too. So, what happened with Mothman?
I was in 5th grade when the Mothman was sighted in West Virginia. Well, here West Virginia is
Let's skip, pop,
20
and jump.
minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, 20 minutes down the road. So I was at my grandparents' reading the local paper, and they're talking about Mothman chasing the car, and I didn't realize that Point Pleasant was, down below Parkersburg on the Ohio River. I was thinking in terms of 15, 20 minutes from where I live, so I was terrified of Mothman because I was convinced he was going to swoop down and snatch me when I was walking home after dark. And then I had a 5th grade teacher named Alan Whiting that he canceled class one day, and we talked about the Mothman.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, cool.
So
Yeah,
it was a
it
cool
was
teacher.
It was pretty cool. And it was shortly after that I had read, there used to be a weekly paper come out that was called The Grit that my grandmother got. And there was an article in it about the Hopkinsville Goblins in Kentucky from the 50s when some kind of a craft landed, and the family saw these things that they described as looking like goblins. So when the authorities finally arrived, they called for help. When the state police and the sheriff arrived, there was 30-06 casings laying all over the place where they'd been shooting at these things. So
Excellent
you grow up
choice.
yeah, you grow up in the country, and you don't pull the guns out unless you're going to shoot something because they're.
And the 30-06 is going to do some damage.
Yeah, they're dangerous, and it's not cheap to, you just don't want to be wasting ammunition. Yeah. So the gist of the thing I came away with, well, they saw something that scared them enough they were shooting at it, and it wasn't, like they shot at these things all night long. So, and it just kind of went on from there. I've read a lot, and
That's scary.
One thing I'm curious about, as a follow-up question, if you don't mind, is for Mothman, was Mothman in the news before the bridge
Yes.
incident? Okay, so this was like happening, and then the bridge happened.
Yeah, it happened. It might have been almost a year.
Oh wow.
I don't remember the timeline, but I'm pretty sure it was. The bridge fell at Christmas time, so it was earlier. It was several months. There was Mothman, and then that's another book if you ever a really interesting read. There's a character named Indrid Cold that kept turning up that was sort of like an alien, but nobody really knew what he was.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that's kind of
Okay.
and then then there's local folklore. There was tales of Black Panthers, and I actually saw a mountain lion when I was about 13. My grandmother was the only one that believed me. My parents thought I was pulling their leg, I think. And then just folklore, local urban legends.
Yep.
Yeah.
No. When I was a little kid, I remember waking my parents up because we were spending the night at my grandparents that lived out in the country, and because I very clearly heard a woman screaming bloody murder,
yes.
and it was a mountain lion. It had to be.
Horrifying.
Yeah, it was terrifying, especially as 8-year-old me.
Yeah, they sound like it's like they're being murdered.
Absolutely.
It's scary.
Yeah.
Imagine you're running through the woods and then you hear that behind you. Like, nope, keep running.
Yeah, they're pretty frightening. Bobcats will make your skin crawl too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You think how does that evolutionarily happen? Like, that's my question. I want to know.
And a bobcat's not that big, but they make a big sound.
But you mentioned the idea of cryptids. So just because our in-laws run the Liminal Unlimited podcast, are you more interested in liminal spaces or ghosts and apparitions or cryptids? Like, if you were going to research, which of those would you choose?
I'd probably go to the liminal spaces because it leads you to the other stuff.
Interesting. All right.
Because you go down a rabbit hole. I have researched some ghosts, but not a lot. Because usually, where you find a ghost, you'll find other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I just don't look at them that much. It's just not my thing, I guess.
That's my favorite thing. Well, so much so that I was listening to a podcast, and there was a story, and I think you'll find this fascinating. This guy gets up, and he's in college, and he's living off campus with his parents, but they're on vacation for a month. And so he, every day, gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning. He puts the dog outside. Then he goes and gets a shower, comes back downstairs for breakfast, puts the dog back in, and then he goes about his day, goes to college. And so he does that, like every normal day, goes downstairs, puts the dog out. But what he recognizes is, he just recognizes that the outside porch light that is like activated by movement doesn't turn on. And he's like, okay, whatever, maybe the light blew. And so he goes up, gets a shower, whatever, comes back downstairs. And when he comes back downstairs, the dog is there waiting to come inside from the moving glass window, what do you want to call it? Sliding door, yeah. So he opens the sliding glass door, the dog comes in, and usually goes to its dog bed or goes to the food, it goes underneath the dining room table. And he's kind of like, all right, whatever. Closes the door, and he goes about his day, and then so he goes upstairs, brushes his teeth, whatever, comes back downstairs, and the dog is up the door again, waiting to come inside. And he kind of goes,
oh, wow.
Wait a second. Hold on. And so he lets the dog in, and then it's his dog. And he's like, well, then what did I already let in? And so for my first thought was, okay, obviously he let in a demon. You're in danger, get some sage. But there's that comment, like the idea of like liminal spaces or some kind of like portal or a parallel universe, or you had your own theory.
Oh, that's
too.
what I said, because then apparently the dog, after it came in, it was like staring at the wall and growling at the wall. And I'm like, it's probably because there's a damn wormhole and it put it back outside and the dog's mad.
So, and I think that kind of to me like kind of proves that like all of this stuff, we don't know how to quantify it. So is it liminal? Is it a ghost? Is it a demon? Is it some kind of creepy cryptid? We don't know. And I think that's what's so fascinating about like this section of our world is we are connected to it. And as you said, when you wrote your little note to me, we are surrounded by the spirit world. For us, we just don't know how to quantify it. We try, but we can't. And what you said, we're all sharing space with the spirit world. And I think that's kind of how, for me, I put it. I prefer to talk about ghosts and demons because we lived through it. So for me, I find that really fascinating. And I was not a believer before this happened, so I like to say over and over again.
Right, but would you have a ghost or a demon without a liminal space for them to enter through? Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And on Skinwalker Ranch, you have like this portal opening and these things crawling.
Oh yeah,
out.
these shadow figures crawling out of the portal. Yeah.
We have them crawl out.
Well, if you read the folklore, things like fae or jinn, they just come and go at their own free will. They don't have to have a definite portal. So it's interesting, like your experience with the was it the purple dress?
Yes,
that disappeared.
It's still gone.
Well, if you read the some of the lore, then you could say that actually what you're dealing with was fae, or I don't like using the word fairy, but and they would take people's clothes, and according to the folklore, the rules of engagements are you're supposed to ask for them to bring it back, because if you do the normal human thing and lose your temper, then they get ticked and then they get mean.
Interesting.
So it's really interesting. The more you read this stuff, there was a couple. Rosemary did a couple books on the jinn.
Yeah, I'd seen that online.
Yeah, and the farm that's in that chapter, Angry Spirits of the Land, it actually made it into two of her jinn books, and she gave me one that I was afraid to read because we had a lot of experiences like what you all had there at the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally read it last year, and it just blew me away because I thought, well, I've seen all this stuff, and it's just like the Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, what you guys experienced was right up there with that. I mean, obviously there weren't any. You weren't shooting at wolves, and
thank goodness.
And there wasn't any. Your bulls weren't coming up missing, or your dogs didn't get vaporized, but
Also, thank God.
Yeah.
yeah, but a lot of that stuff, it all seems like it comes out of the same bag of tricks.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the whole Faye thing because that just it connects to, as you said, so much. My watch missing, my shoes missing, and the dress missing, and then
and you have to
just give it
verbally
back.
you have to verbally say like, I want this back, and then it shows up like 5 minutes later.
Yeah, except for the basement thing with asking for the onesie, and then that thing, the shadow figure.
Yeah.
Apart from that, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things. 15 years ago, I would have laughed if somebody told me I'd be talking about it. But I've told this story a couple of times. We have a volunteer holly bush in front of the house, and we had solar lights in it for years. And of course, I was trimming it, and I cut the light string. So it was getting towards the end of the year, and the holidays were coming up, and I was standing outside trying to decide what kind of solar lights I should put on this holly bush. And I heard clear as a bell a voice say, "We'd like red lights."
Oh my.
Wow.
And I saw that's what's on it, is little red solar stars.
Done. Don't hurt me. Ask and you shall receive.
Okay, there, here you are. So that actually forced me to read some of that lore, because you have to watch how you talk around them. You don't want to. If they do something, you don't say thank you, because then, I guess the way they look at it, then you owe them. And so it's just different. But like I said, 15 years ago, I would have laughed if somebody said you're going to be reading about the Fae. But it's
Yeah, I've always loved Poe, but if like 10 years ago, I don't. Well, no, I guess how old's still going to be Sophie 12 this year? 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, whenever we moved to this house, so a dozen years ago, like 15 years, like you said, I would see myself in charge of a podcast and saying, I believe in ghosts.
Yeah, and telling people across the world about it.
Well, quite a few years ago, my husband and I went to Ireland, and part of the tour in Ireland, the bus driver was talking about these particular bushes, and I can't remember what they're called, but it's a particular kind of bush, which is kind of invasive. It's sort of a weed, yeah. And sort of how in our area we have the Russian olive bushes that are just a real pain. And there are all these farmers, and these things are just growing rampant, but the local lore, or Irish lore, I guess I should say, says you cannot remove them because that's where the fairies live. This is their home. And if you cut one down, the fairies will come after you every night for the rest of your life, and you'll have insomnia, you can't sleep. And so we were out at a pub one night after, doing our tours, and I'm just talking to a local guy, and he's a farmer, and so, I was telling him what we had seen that day, and he said, "Oh, you can't believe any of this lore. It's a bunch of rubbish." And I said, "Well, do you have any of these on your property?" He said, "I have 3, and I won't go near them."
Were they hawthorns?
I think that's what it was, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
It's a bunch of bollocks, but kidding.
But I don't go near them.
Just in case.
Just in case.
Yeah.
I love those just in case.
Yep.
Well, I know you have questions for us, but I was drawn to a quote that you had said. You had said, "In my opinion, far too often we expect the unseen entities to interact with us on our terms with little effort at understanding on our part. I don't believe that's how it works. The spirit world communicates with us directly, daily, and often through signs, symbols, and metaphors, none of which can be registered, let alone interpreted by a chirping box in a dark room in the middle of the night." So I just wanted you to kind of elaborate on that. What did you mean?
Well, let's say you invited one of the quote-unquote mainstream paranormal investigative teams to come check out your place. They might have gotten some stuff on their electronic gear, but you wouldn't have gotten any of the insight that the priests gave you, because they've got this stuff. To me, it's all spiritual. And this society has become so secular and so homocentric that we think we're the the be all end all. We're sort of in charge of the bricks and mortar, but we're barely, we could barely control ourselves. So you see these guys, and this is just based on what I've seen here in Greene County. They come in, they'll look at a place for maybe 5 days, and they'll draw conclusions, and they don't know the history, like you all do of that house. They don't. It's just whatever flashy and glamorous thing they can come up with to get on camera, and then suppose. When you were having the problems with the baby monitors, you and the neighbors.
Oof.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. I almost our middle daughter used the baby monitors a lot, and I almost called her and I said, "Jenny, you really ought to listen to this." And I thought, no, she'll be up for weeks. But you heard that plain as day. But yet these guys on these shows, they're doing the Estes method, where only the guy with the headphones on hears it, and or what comes on the EVP they interpret for you. And I, when I first started working with Rosemary, we did all that, and then we got away from it because more and more often the gear would fail because the batteries would go dead, and that's when I sort of came up with the theory that maybe what we're actually doing was annoying these things.
Yeah.
So we just would literally go sit down on. We'd usually have a digital recorder, but we'd just go sit down and watch, and that's when we saw a lot of this stuff. And I think it works a lot like the parables. You can read parables in the Bible, and at face value, they say one thing, but when you really interpret it, like sowing the seeds on the rocks and sowing the seeds on the fertile ground, or sowing the seeds on the path, then I think that's kind of how this works. An example out at the Historical Society, there's that one ghost, I think I called, or apparition, I think I called him Otis maybe, would walk past people and their phones would drain so fast it would literally almost burn their it would almost burn their leg. Wow. And they were looking at it was it was draining the battery, and my thing is, well, what's it trying to tell you? And I think a lot of times a lot of the stuff we do they find a bit annoying. I was at Hillview Manor this past summer.
You actually went. We want to go so bad.
Yeah, I'd never gone. I'd heard all these great things about it. They had a conference, and I rented some space and set up a table.
That's what we want to do.
And there was all these investigators there who were out in the hallway, and two of them were talking about they had gotten this EVP of a guy named Bill that wanted them to go away and leave him alone. And they were laughing about it, and I thought, well, why don't you just go away and leave him alone?
Yeah.
So that's and you see that a lot here too with the people who come in here, and I guess it's from the folklore background. Well, granted, there's ghosts that do repetitive stuff, and there's human hauntings. But when you get into this stuff that acts with intelligence, like that entity that you had, obviously some of the messages were pretty blatant. But they don't. There's a place here in town called the Huffman House. It has a wall in the basement. And it had been used as a funeral parlor at one point, and it's pretty active. And I was in it a couple of times this past year. I got invited to tag along on this in public investigations, and the stuff I thought was very disturbing because they had a. I'm not a big fan on SLS cameras because I don't understand why a disembodied spirit needs to show up with arms and legs because they don't need them. But they had they thought they had an apparition in a chair, and everybody was talking to it. And I looked at the screen, and what I saw was a dog. And that to me was like, okay, this is not a person, so we need to leave this alone. So I kind of pulled out of it at that point.
Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to tell you. my grandmother's house had a well in it, and the sun porch never had a bit of problem. But that the house at the farm, there was a well right at the entry, and that place was just a madhouse. It was just a madhouse.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
You're
so
not alone.
but there again in lore, they'll use springs and wells and caves and mines and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I've done a lot of research on you, and I think your book kind of showcases the stuff that you've been through, how you've had apports, and you've seen shadow apparitions. And obviously, you had mentioned already, one of my questions was about your background with folklore. So I actually get to skip number 10 on my list of questions because you already answered it with your low-tech approach. So my next question actually was, I got two, and then I'm done.
Okay.
One is, tell me more about the lizard man sighting in Franklin Township, because I just found that fascinating. But also, we have Laura here, and you had mentioned you had questions for us. So what questions do you have for us?
Did the what made the priest think that there had been black magic performed there?
So do you want to tell that?
That he said through their research was just a common thing in the days like late 1800s and 1700s, sorry, and where like a lot of black magic requires like fresh water, things like that, and so but instead of grabbing a bucket and hauling it back home, you just do it right there. No one's around. It's 3 a.m. or whatever, so no one's gonna be watching. So you just do it right there at the source instead of hauling the water back to wherever you're gonna do it.
Yeah, so you said it wasn't the well; it's actually all the area
The
around
land
the
around
well.
it,
So
yeah.
where
Okay.
we're
Yeah.
sitting right now, actually,
the property, yeah.
I guess we're safest on the well. We should go over there. But yeah, the idea is that he's like underneath the concrete here in the basement. You probably have all bits of like bird bones and
Cat
whatnot.
bones and stuff like
God
that.
knows what underneath our house from the stuff they had done.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Did and the Hayden family's owned that for quite a while?
Since the
89.
Did before you two moved in, was there any activity?
When I was a kid growing up, I had like things happen to me, and that's something else the Exorcist said is it would go for like whatever it deemed weaker or more of a threat when in your case. So like I was afraid to like go upstairs by myself. Like Laura often had to
okay, I do
escort
remember
me
you saying
upstairs. My bed would wobble, and I always thought it was just like my mind playing tricks on me or vertigo.
He was a sickly kid growing up, so
Kind of, yeah.
Well, yeah, you had
I was.
asthma.
Oh, yeah. I had
had
like that iron
medicine,
deficiency
yeah,
and things like that.
deficiency, yeah. I just
so-
thought he was a chicken.
yeah. So I always thought
Of
it was
course,
in
you
my
didn't
head.
pick on him either, did you?
No.
of course not.
Yeah,
Never.
Sibling love.
yeah. But like the bed wobbling, I always thought was in my head until one day the cat was on the bed with me when it started to wobble, and then she bolted out of the room.
Didn't she hiss too? And she
No,
scratched
she
you?
just ran. Well, she scratched as she like kicked off my chest, and that's when I realized that I wasn't imagining it, and it was all actually happening.
Well, and Kyle had some things happen here in this house too when he lived here, because you have to understand that like this house has had every Hayden and Thatcher like in it at some point. Pretty much. It's crazy.
Every Hayden and spouse,
Yeah, every grandchild too, actually. So because we hadn't bought the house yet. But Kyle had some stuff happen in what is now Sophie's room, where we had that really creepy figure watching her when she was sleeping.
Yeah.
So he had his own thing. Laura, did you ever have anything happen?
I never did. No.
Yeah.
Jen hasn't either. But, when I was talking to your mom, God rest her soul, she said, we really didn't think about it, but the house was always so busy that if something went missing, we just thought one of the kids grabbed it and moved it. So when we would say, like, where is my watch? It would just show back up. So again, they were asking for it, but not really asking for it. They just figured it just showed up,
And, I got to a point where being raised Catholic and everything, I would have nightmares every single night unless like if I had prayed to my guardian angel for like any kind of protection or whatever, no nightmare. But if I ever missed a night and forgot to pray, like boom, I would get a nightmare that night.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
And that sticks with Eli. He still says, "Okay, can we say our prayers tonight?" And he prays to his guardian angel to not have nightmares.
And things have been quiet?
since
Knock on
since
wood.
2018.
This is
Yeah.
plastic, but
Well, yeah.
but you also had that thing with Dan in the house. Remember the basement?
Oh
and
yeah.
the
Oh yeah.
doors
When I was
opening?
when I was like 15, and my best friend and I were here, and the door to the basement just like flung open one
By the
day.
way, there were like 3 locks on this basement door when I moved in, and I was like, "Why do we need so many locks?" Oh, now I know why. Oh, well, that
That's
makes
like
sense.
the Skinwalker.
Exactly. Yes.
And it is possible. I know I've told you before, but when Linda, my best friend, when we were growing up, and still now, were little girls, young, 11, 10, 11, we played with a Ouija board.
Yeah.
It's a Ouija.
Ouija board.
Shout out to Kyle.
Yeah, but yeah, and it went crazy. Like, it was normal at first, and then it I remember at one point it started going so fast on the board that it just like flung off the board.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. That was the last. It freaked us out.
Yeah. Well, and
Well,
some-
you
oh, sorry. Go
were
ahead.
talking about the dog when the didn't he like have like a mega P event when?
Oh
something-
yes,
That was-
with
yeah.
the priest.
Yeah, we had a garden out at that farm, and I was out there with our youngest daughter, and we have a dog that's half lab and half Cuvée, which is an old livestock
Yeah.
breed, real vocal. And we were out there working one evening, and she would when I would take her out there, she would look at one corner of the yard and bark. But I couldn't see anything there, so my youngest daughter and I are out there working, and the dog just starts going ballistic.
Oh jeez.
And she's barking and barking and barking, and all her hair's standing up. And all of a sudden, she tucks her tail between her legs and goes around behind me and looks around my legs and starts growling again, and like spit's flying out of her mouth.
Oh wow.
And I looked at my daughter and I said, "Let's leave."
Yeah, we should probably go.
Time to go.
So we load up in the truck, and the dog at that point was riding in the back. So we're going down the road about 35 miles an hour in a full-size pickup truck, and we're laughing at our dog. I said, "We got the only dog in Greene County that's going to bark at nothing going 35 miles an hour down the road." And I no sooner said that than something came down out of the trees and swooped up over the hood that looked like a bird, for lack of a better thing. It was just a blob with wings, and it was gray, and it was the width of the hood of the truck, and it flew up over the windshield. And Morgan, I think, was 11 at the time, and I thought, I'm not going to say a word. She went about a tenth of a mile, and she said, "That wasn't a bird, was it?" And I said, "No." But I dogs and cats, a good dog can really let you know what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love Rosie.
they're
She's
good.
a smart one.
Yeah.
Well, it happened in her house too. Did you listen to her stories about the
Not
dogs?
all of them.
Yeah. Episode 1 is all
Episode,
her
like-
house.
Oh,
and-
okay. I did hear that. Yeah.
The original
Yeah.
story, the original episode. Their dog and cats growling at the basement door.
Yep.
Like she
Yeah.
has so many stories of that.
Yeah, because we've always had a lot of animals. But one time I was away traveling, and my husband, he had a scary encounter with a figure in the bed that wasn't me because I was away. And
There was a ghost trying to fill your spot,
yeah,
literally, in the
and,
bed.
yeah. So normally he never let our dog, at the time was a fairly large black pit bull mix named Tinkerbell, of course.
A Pitbull lab. She was adorable.
Yeah, she was a good girl. So normally he didn't let her up on the bed, but that night he was like, "Come on, T, come on, me." And she wouldn't come up, which normally she would have loved to. So he physically lifted her onto the bed, and she like immediately peed and jumped off, which she
Wow.
never, ever did. So that was so out of character. So that's when he was like, So, I mean, now he's cleaning it up, and it was just, now he was irritated.
Yeah, I had. My mother was like OCD about cleaning, so there was no such thing as a dog in the house. They were always outside, and it wasn't until that stuff at the farm was because my wife is a nurse, so a lot of times we worked opposite shifts, and I started letting the Cuvée up on the bed because she'd let me know if anything was going on because I just couldn't sleep.
Sure.
It was got pretty wild.
Yeah, that's even Skinwalker Ranch. They always have animals out as biosensors, especially dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To
Even
bring
the
it
first
back
couple
around to that.
episodes, they have the dog Williams running around barking.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Not that I put much, like, stock in TV shows, but I think they did a pretty good job of, like, doing science there. So
Yeah.
we're not going to get in that conversation about his accent, though. Anywho, do you have any other questions for us?
Do your kids ever see anything?
They did.
Yes.
They
do.
used to all the
since
time.
Exorcism?
No.
I mean, Sophie, we're not sure, but like
Yeah.
for Eli, he is very happy with his life being the way it is. He still prays, but he doesn't see anything.
Good.
But she hasn't seen anything in the house, really,
No. Yeah.
which is good. I think it's mostly because it's locked down. And if she thinks she sees it, we go, hey, get the holy water. You're good. Even if you saw a shadow, it's okay. Just toss some
Hey, do
water
you still
on.
do the holy water?
Oh, we have it all over the house, yeah.
All over
a
the
good
house.
Joke. You come to our house, we got a bottle even in the shower.
Yep, there's one in the shower stall. There's one in the kitchen. They're all over the place.
over.
The little bottles everywhere.
It's just left over really from, a couple years ago, but
Yeah.
it's good to have. And, the kids.
Yeah, it can't hurt anything.
Just, bless yourself, you're good to go.
Yeah.
But of course, if you're Catholic, that's like one of the gifts you get when you walk into our church. You get a swag bag of a rosary and holy water, and a lot of guilt. That's what you get from the Catholic church. A lot of guilt. Oh boy! So tell us because I know we've been on here for a little bit, but tell us your favorite story. It can be cryptid, but something that happened to you that to you proves that there is something out there, whether it's a ghost, it's a cryptid, it's the liminal space. One good story.
You want me to answer the lizard man thing first?
Sure. Oh yeah,
Ooh,
lizard
yes,
man.
please.
That's more for Kyle.
Okay, the lizard man. I was doing research, trying to trace the ownership of the people that own that farm, and I was looking for obituaries. So I was at the Genealogical Society, and of course I get you start looking at old newspapers and you get sidetracked. So I'm looking through these newspapers from the 1890s, and there's a story about these
Wow.
guys in Franklin Township that were hunting that came across what we would call these days we would call a reptilian. And it was big. It was real big and real strong, but couldn't move real fast. Sort of like the Gorn on Star Trek. If you're
Sure.
it picked the one guy up and was carrying him off.
Oh my
And his
gosh!
buddy went to go get help and came back, and they caught up with this reptilian. That we called him Lizard Man. Just as he was about to go, of course, a conveniently placed, cave. So they attacked the thing, got the guy free, and they went down the cave and they blocked the entrance. So I remember telling Rosemary about that, and we thought, boy, this is a really cool story, and we talked about how it was one of those things that was probably printed to sell newspapers. So years go by, and we decided to write the book, and I just couldn't find anything to corroborate Lizard Man. And this I've never told this in public. I used to own Greene County's only indoor year-round farmers market. So I was at the market one day, and there was a lady came in that her husband and my dad had done a lot of business together. And she was familiar with that part of Franklin Township, which really wasn't too far from where I grew up. So I was telling her the story of Lizard Man, and I'd even figured out just about where this had taken place. And I said, I sure wish I could, find somebody that could corroborate this. And I had actually prayed about this like 2 days before. And this lady had her youngest daughter with her, and it turns out that this lady's oldest daughter had seen that big frog lizard like humanoid thing by a pond on the same farm in the 70s. And I thought, well, Lizard Man just made it into the book.
That's
These
awesome.
people you can't prove any of it other than, you know the people. But I sort of came to the conclusion that Lizard Man was actually associated with some Native American artifacts because this farm had a burial ground on it too, which was documented. I mean, it's on the National Historic Register. So Lizard Man. Actually, that's how he got it into the book.
Well, Kyle will be very happy to know that Lizard Man has made it.
My favorite story, if you've read the second book, would have to be The Morrigan. Have you read it yet? The Close Encounters of the Celtic Kind.
I have, but they have not.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Okay. Over a 2-year period, I had a series of dreams, and this is where this is the kind of information you don't get from an electronic investigation. And they were a lot of them would start off with an environmental theme. It was stuff that I was familiar with because it was work related, but it'd also be very unusual because it had what I came to find out was a lot of sacred geometry. And I started running into these people, almost always women, probably about your age, and they looked like hippie chicks from the Vietnam era.
Oh,
a lot of loose clothes, gauze.
Yep.
Not always, didn't spend a lot of time on their parents. So I'm at work one day in real time in the Northern Panhandle, and I get sent out to this farm, and the lady that owns the farm had hired. He said, I hired somebody to put on the payroll to help me. I'd like you to meet her. And this woman walks into the room, and it's this hippie chick I'd been seeing in these dreams.
Oh, wow.
So it kind of freaked me out. And at that point, this is the Cliff Notes version, but at that point, the people I encountered changed. It was still primarily female, but she started looking like from antiquity. She had kind of auburn-colored hair and dark eyes. Kind of, I don't want to use the word athletic, but you wouldn't want to,
There's
the kind
a
of
white
person,
thing. Oh, there it goes.
Stella. Stella the Border Collie.
No, just lie and tell our viewers that it's a white thing. We just had a white thing.
We had a sighting.
We had a sighting.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was on one of these one night, and she came in the bedroom. The door opened, and the guy's like, "Do you know the door just opened?" I thought it was probably Stella. But so I started seeing this woman with dark eyes, auburn-colored hair, and very businesslike. She was really feminine, but it was really like a strong femininity. And when I really, the one night I noticed her in the dream, she, in the dream, my wife and I were getting ready to retire for the evening, and she was in the bathroom, and I was in bed, and we were having a conversation. And I could feel my wife get in bed with me, and I rolled over to say something to me, and here's this woman with the auburn hair, and I jumped out of bed. Who are you? What are you doing? You got no business here. And she got out of the bed and said, I wanted you to see me, as in my natural state, because I've been with you longer than anyone. Even your wife. And I woke up, wow. And at this point, I was sleeping with both dogs in the bedroom, and I was convinced there was somebody in the house, except the dogs were asleep. So went on from that. I was at work one day, and I got sent out to this job site that I'd been to several times, and I always liked going there because there was a tree there that had had 4 or 5 crows that lived in it. So I went out to try to get pictures of the crows and couldn't. And I had heard that and crows were something that was a recurring theme in these dreams with this dark-haired woman. There was cattle, there was crows, a lot of nature stuff, a lot of geometry. But on this site, there was an abandoned road went back to the woods, and I'd heard that there was a house back in there that had been abandoned. And I thought, well, I'll just take a walk back there and look. I wanted to see this house. So I'm walking back this lane, and I'm getting pelted with acorns, and I could hear the footsteps in the weeds off to one side. And so I tried zigzagging because I thought, well, it's October and it's a little windy. So wherever I went, the acorns followed me and kept hitting me. So I got to the house, and I had a very strong impression that I was not only was I not to go any further, but I was not to go in the house. So I just out loud thanked, well, thanks for the escort. I'm going to go back to the truck now. And I got back to the truck, and my coworker by this time, who was he was from another agency, and he was in another vehicle, was standing by his vehicle, and we're standing there talking. And this is a pretty rough piece of ground. It's a lot of rock, and it's really steep. And this woman steps out of the brush, and he sees a young woman in a hoodie and blue jeans and a T-shirt with a dog. And I saw this auburn-haired woman from the dream in leggings and like her blouse laced up, like real old style clothing, and she had kind of a cape with a hood on it and this gargantuan black dog. And it was the same woman from the dream, and it really it upset me quite a bit. So when I got home, I worked with a couple psychics, one of which is Lindsay Miller in Armstrong County. And I'd been telling her about these dreams, and she was the one that said, you need to look into the Morrigan, who is a Celtic Irish deity. And I started doing research in the Morrigan, and I realized that the stuff that happened to me in the dreams fit the folklore. So it took me a while to figure out that it was the whole thing about sovereignty in the paranormal community, and we shouldn't be exploitation of the spirit world for profit. So like about not quite a year later, I was at another site and work related, and I just had this impression that I was supposed to go to this park, and I thought, well, okay, I'm at work and I'm in a work vehicle, so how can I justify this, because it's kind of out of my way. And I thought, well, it's like 3 miles out of my way one way, and I thought, well, there's a restroom there, I could go to the restroom. So I went to the restroom, and I went and sat on this bench, and I said, okay, I'm here, who are you and what do you want? And bang, she was sitting on the bench next to me and said that there needed to be dialogue between the paranormal subculture and the Christian community. And so that's kind of where I'm working on a third book. So it's going to have some stories in it, but there's going to be hopefully I'll be able to tie some of this in and get this message across. But see, it's one of those things I had a lot of trouble with at the time. Because, I was raised Protestant, but there's still the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it took me a while to figure this out. I thought, oh, this is what they mean about no other gods before me, and it's been it's easier to tell Catholics than it is Protestants, because if you know Protestants that I was talking, this I shouldn't say the thing. This entity from Irish pagan folklore appeared and had a message for me. Well, you shouldn't do that. It's the devil. Well, okay, but we can't really dictate to God who He sends for messengers.
Yeah,
and the whole thing is. Trying to keep that in perspective, as a Christian. But it's been an interesting ride.
Well, and you kind of mentioned that too in your second book when you kind of finish up and you talk about spiritualism. You have a whole section on that, which I think is cool. I think you and Kyle Thatcher should really connect at some point, because I'd mentioned that you have that big section on spiritualism, and that's kind of where he falls too. The idea that we need to look at our Christian faith and know that there are many other faiths out there, but there has to be a connection, and we can use that ability to kind of, I would say, protect ourselves, but also talk to them and figure out what it is that they want, so they're not causing problems for us too.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's kind of where I'm at. But
Yeah.
that's the whole. If you read that, and I can never get the title right, it's in the back of the book. It's Appalachian Folk Magic and Protestant Christianity, and I'm not sure how I picked that up, but that's kind of where I'm at. And I know I've learned a lot. What I learned about the Morgan and about the Fae and stuff, I had to get from a couple of writers that are pagan. But where else are you going to get the thing that's interesting when you like Laura O'Brien in Ireland? If you watch her videos, she'll say the reason that the pagan subculture has been able to come back in Ireland is because when the Christians first got there, they wrote all that stuff down, and because prior to that, it had not been preserved in writing. So it's.
Well, there's obviously a connection, like
Yeah.
and there's something older than because Christianity isn't that old compared to other religions too. So we need to look at we need to look at that too. Like when we get back to the whole Skinwalker Ranch discussion, the idea of the Native American folklore predates all of our stuff that was out there, and so it's important to look at their religion and their belief system when you look at what's happening on that ranch and around that ranch.
Right. I mean, and as you said too, talking about the Fae, I mean, there's the possibility of the, instead of supernatural, the ultranatural.
Ultranatural, yeah.
That they're these other beings that are just elusive. They're, they have whatever the case is.
There's a different plane of existence.
Right. They're just elusive from our reality.
Yeah.
So.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for because our next podcast is here. Shout out to Jack and Aspen behind the scene. We're doing Danger and Dice. Actually, so I'll show you your head. There you go. The other one.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Yes.
We do 3 podcasts, and this week is pretty thick with interviews. So we really thank you so much.
Yes.
I was super excited to talk to you because I love your books. We're looking forward.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to number 3.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
let me know
When the
comes
third one
back.
comes around, if you want to do another interview and give a shout out to it,
come on,
we'd love
yeah,
to have you
yeah,
back.
let's-
Let's keep
gotta
in touch.
We got to have
Definitely,
lots of
definitely.
Zoom interviews. We got to just talk about our stories.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
We
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed this. And don't be a stranger. As you listen to the podcast, send me messages.
Yeah.
Okay, I will.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a
Thank
great
you.
evening.
Have a good night.
Thank
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.